So this is quite a serious video, and I've reflected on a lot of things lately. So I want to tell you about that and tell you about what happens when you advocate and stand up for certain values as an individual, as a parent, as a social worker, as someone who cares about children or the vulnerable. This is very challenging. So I had a video, it was probably one of my second most successful video that I did on my TikTok page, and it was interesting. I called out behaviors. Grooming behaviors, okay? Now, I just want to bear in mind, and to be very critically honest, grooming behavior isn't the same as grooming. Grooming behavior is just demonstrating the same behaviors, whatever your intentions are, we can't always say, but the behavior is on any level inappropriate. Don't need to go into the details of it. But my point is this, when I called it out, I was name called. I was name called in such a way that I was like, this might end my career. I'm calling out behaviors of someone, and when people are name calling and reposting and calling me out because I'm calling out someone from a particular community, it's quite scary. Do you know what I mean? What's going on? It's all grey there. Wow. It's quite scary because, you know, careers can be ended on that basis, right? So this is where it gets interesting, because I had to say to myself, shall I not call out certain behaviors to keep our children safe because I might offend someone? And then I'm thinking, well, you know, as a social worker, I guess advocacy, the next level, I guess, is like, I'm using a platform. I'm trying to use a little bit of courage and speak up and say how we can protect our children from being vulnerable in general. But if I'm name called and if a career can be ended, it's scary. So I pulled the video down. The video was 99.999% supported, but there were one or two people, and that's all it takes to start name calling. And, you know, I don't name call on here. I don't name call on my live sessions. But one of the things we are faced with, sorry, you know, I came from a church community. It was an all right church community, but there were serious flaws in it, and there was sexual abuse involved. Not with me, it was with someone else. And the way that the church reacted was concerning for me. So I left. When I look at the fact that power, conformity, social influence, all these theories come into play, where you've got pastors, elders, noted people in the community, doctors, wealthy, you've got policemen, you've got teachers, leaders of institutions, noted people, most recently the Dalai Lama, and then you also have had some a particular trans person also displaying behaviors. I've seen it with my own eyes, and it's like, it's inappropriate. Shall I call it out? Yes, because I work with children who fall into or are vulnerable and are not fully aware of how abuse starts. It doesn't start by someone grabbing, or it doesn't start by someone moving in secret. We looked at, you know, grooming is by any means necessary. This is what I see, and this is what I've always seen, and this is what I've experienced. Grooming is in your face. It's sometimes public, in front of everybody. And that's the thing about grooming. It's not something that there's someone in the shadows. It's sometimes someone in your face. And what was interesting was the Dalai Lama recently displayed some very concerning behavior. And you have to ask yourself the question, has he done it before? I'm starting to, you know, I have to reflect before I speak. We have to protect our children, but also as parents or custodians of society, we have to protect our children and be really aware ourselves of the power of influence and position and how people can be overlooked. I recently podcasted on how just the higher classes can avoid the attention because of the way they speak and because of their social standing. And people in any position, whether it be a leader of a church, to police, to doctors, to politicians, to anybody, they can all be dangerous people. And the moment we start to turn off our curiosity because we're scared as social workers, because we are worried about being called names, is the moment our children become more unsafe in a world that makes them so much more vulnerable. I am really worried now because social media is changing the game, and it's catching people in the act. It's where social media is catching people saying things that are really concerning. And just because you have a great title or you've done great work does not mean you are any safer than anybody else. And if there's one thing that working in children and families as a social worker has taught me, is that anybody and everybody is a suspect. I was name called heavily, and I've had a long discussion with people who I've expressed, and I'm going to give an example. I was called transphobic. I'll just say it. Crazy. That's crazy. And my service users, people I've supported, young people for years, could not agree with that. I will say this. I am not racist because I called out in one of my previous podcasts 5 black officers who killed a black man recently in America. I am not racist. I'm not racist because I called out Jimmy Savile. I've recently podcasted on Rolf Harris, and we just analyze the behaviors so that we can be more aware. I am not racist or transphobic because I've called out a particular behavior of another social media influencer of the trans community. Whoever you are, if you display certain behaviors, you should be called out, or you should stop, or at least someone should speak to you privately at the very least. But you need to stop, and social workers need to be do you know something? I'm going to give you an example. There was I read a serious case review where there was a homosexual couple who were applying to become foster carers, and they went through 3 social workers. Obviously social workers change, and one particular social worker said, I was assessing this family. That social worker went off sick, so she couldn't continue her work, but she had done some assessment, and the assessments of foster carers are very extensive. And she went through the assessment and found that there were certain things about them in their character, in the things that they were saying, that made her feel that they were not to be foster carers. She was unhappy with some of the things that they were saying, and I don't remember everything that she said, but what she did say was this: I granted them, or at that stage in the assessment, I allowed it to go forward because I was afraid of being called homophobic. And that is a massive problem. And so what happens is, they were granted the ability to foster children, and they ended up murdering the foster child, okay? And there was something about them that was seen, but we're afraid of the titles, and it's the power of, or the fear of being name called, which happened to me. It's the fear of being name called that is really a concern. And then what we are doing is we're allowing unacceptable behavior to happen because we're afraid of going against the common narrative. And social workers really have to learn to stand in an uncomfortable place, because we're going to be name called. You're always taking our kids. They're going to put our face up on social media, and it's more complicated than that. And that is the point of social work, is that that's where it gets real. That's where it becomes scary, because you're thinking, I can't do my job and protect this child from abuse because I don't want my name in the papers. We do really need the press to think before they print, because they're really putting more children at risk, because social workers have to make difficult decisions every day to protect their children, and they're worrying about what the papers are going to say. And whilst we have that freedom of speech, we also have to be responsible with it. We have different communities, and everything I say, I have to be responsible as far as possible. And if anybody wants to hold me to account, hold me to account, but be responsible with the name calling, be responsible with the reporting. Social workers, we're going to have to get more backbones put in place, because we are sometimes afraid of the repercussions of doing the right thing. So I guess it's just an overview of the concerns that are in society and how we navigate them as professionals. To be fearless is just a word, but in reality, to be fearless in social work, I would say is I would even want to change it. I would even say we have to be courageous, which means you have to be fearful yet still do the right thing. And I'm trying to do that in this. Someone's leaning on my car. I'm trying to do that in this platform, is to encourage social workers to just do what needs to be done. But I am very worried about the level of judgment and the power of how that judgment can change lives and change careers, can end careers, can damage someone permanently, because we're afraid of the repercussions. And I think social workers need to be very much supported. Group supervision needs to be had, where we can understand how we are protected. Because to be fair, if I'm going into a burning fire and I know that I don't have the equipment on, would I run into that fire to save someone? That is really yeah. That is what I wanted to say, really. It's been on my mind for a while. I think I really want to be one of those people that just says, yeah, social worker, yeah, but this is the reality of it. What are you going to do, I guess? What are you going to do? Are you going to, when you're in those situations, reach out to someone. When you just question, you're like, I'm not sure. Get advice, and, yeah. Yeah. Take care of yourselves. Hopefully this was helpful. Share your thoughts on it, because it's a lot.